So look at Anthony Ryder from South Lyon, Michigan, recently selected as the Lions 2020 Fan of the Year. He has a passion about sports broadcasting.
With the 112th selection in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Detroit Lions select Amon-Ra St. Brown, wide receiver, USC. One pride, baby! Yeah! What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to another Detroit Lions video. Now, the Detroit Lions took a very tough L to the Seattle Seahawks just a week ago on Sunday in their home opener, losing their home opening game 37-31. The defense did not have a very good game, had 0 turnovers, had just 1 sack from a broken play from Alex Anzalone, the outside linebacker, and defense was not the strength of the Lions team on Sunday. But today, with the All-22 officially coming out yesterday and having a little bit of time to sit down and rewatch it, I do think the defense was a little bit better than we're giving it credit for, and I do think there are some positives to take away, as well as some things to look at and fix in order to go into Atlanta and find defensive success. So today, I want to take a look at this game. I want to take a look at the defensive struggles, the defensive strengths, take a look at what the Lions did well on defense, what things were maybe out of their control, and what things certainly need to improve and get better going into week 3 versus the Atlanta Falcons. So starting off, I want to take a look at the running game. Now, the Detroit Lions had a very strong rushing defense against Seattle, as well as versus Kansas City 2 weeks ago in Arrowhead. The Lions really over the past 12 weeks, with the exception of one game, and we all know what game that is, have been really, really strong versus the run, in particular versus RB1s. Kenneth Walker did not have a very strong day, averaging just over 3 yards per carry, with Zach Charbonnet being a little bit better, but neither running back having over 60 yards rushing. And Isaiah Pacheco 2 weeks ago also had just about 50 rushing yards on the day. The Lions starting defense, the Lions rushing defense in particular, has been very strong, even in the absence of Isaiah Buggs and third-round pick Broderick Martin, who were both projected to be the more run-defending players. The Lions defensive line has done a really good job, right? Kenneth Walker, a former Heisman finalist, a guy that was drafted in the second round, rushed for over 1,000 yards last year, is a very dynamic running back, was really bottled up for most of the game, right? This one, he tries to bounce outside. Cam Sutton and Aiden Hutchinson are able to close the edge for a very, very minimal game. Another one, Kenneth Walker tries to break it outside. Derek Barnes shoots the gap, and it's only a 2 to 3 yard game early in the drive. These first couple are all on the first drive, by the way. They're trying to establish that running game, and they really can't, right? Kenneth Walker, again, a little bit of a zone run. Derek Barnes breaks right through the hole, and he's able to kind of tackle Kenneth Walker for a very minimal game. That one only 3 yards on the play. Closer into the red zone, right? Kenneth Walker gets the ball. Aleem McNeil flies in to make a play. Doesn't quite tackle him. CJ Gardner-Johnson's available. He's right here just with Charles Harris, and they're able to tackle him, even force him backwards for a tackle for loss. Now, unfortunately, the unnecessary roughness on CJ Gardner-Johnson gives them the first down after that. But again, all on the first drive, more really good rushing defense. Right here on the goal line, it is 1st and goal. Kenneth Walker trying to go over the line, and Aleem McNeil, Alex Anzalone are not going to let that happen, and they're going to tackle him again short of the end zone, not allowing him to get in. Next offensive drive, right? Zach Charbonnet tries to break through the hole, tries to establish a little bit of that running game. And Jack Campbell makes a really good play, but so does Derek Barnes, right? They both get to the right spot. You're going to see Zach Charbonnet try to cut it back. Jack Campbell's in the perfect spot, and not to let that happen, forces him back into the pressure for, again, just a 2 yard gain on what a cutback could have been a much larger gain for the Seattle offense. Kenneth Walker, again, just bottled up. A delayed draw play for the Seattle Seahawks running game doesn't amount to anything because the linebackers and the safeties are able to crash down, and the defensive line is able to hold its edge, right? Kenneth Walker right here. he has the opportunity. If he breaks this tackle, it very well could be a touchdown, but some strong tackling from CJ Gardner-Johnson prevents that. With Cam Sutton setting the edge, it would have been a very minimal gain had CJ Gardner-Johnson not done it, and Cam Sutton, of course, had to make the tackle. But if CJ Gardner-Johnson didn't step up into the hole, that could have been a massive gain, but the Lions' run defense was strong. They were able to hold the edge, and they were able to make a strong tackle and force a very, very minimal gain. I really think the Lions are going to miss CJ Gardner-Johnson a lot in his absence, but I think they'll be able to make up for it as well. Right here, Aiden Hutchinson is setting the edge. He's setting the edge. These guys on the interior do a good job closing up all the gaps. And even though Aiden Hutchinson doesn't tackle him, he slows him down enough for safety Kirby Joseph to step up and make a tackle. Right? Kenneth Walker, not an easy guy to tackle. He is a very strong running back. He broke a lot of big runs versus the Rams, broke a ton of big runs last year. And for the most part, with the exception of about 2 runs from him and 1 from Charbonnet, the run was bottled up the entire game. And really, other than short yardage situations, didn't help them too much. Now, Aaron Glenn really, I think, struggled at certain points in this game. And one of the things I think he really, really struggled this week, and one thing that just wasn't very good about this game, was the defensive scheming, particularly in how he asked his cornerbacks to play against DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. Right? He asked them to play a lot of off coverage. He asked them to turn and run and bail extremely early, allowing a lot of underneath throws, allowing a lot of easy comebacks, a lot of easy curls, and really hanging our cornerbacks out to dry, knowing that both of them are better in man coverage, knowing both of them are better getting contact early in routes. It really doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me why you're going to have Jerry Jacobs down here, a guy that in his rookie year as a UDFA was pressing Jamar Chase and forcing PBUs, that you're going to have him sit here. Right, he starts about 6 yards of cushion and just continues to bail. He just continues to run away from DK, just farther, never initiates contact, and DK is able to turn around and make an incredibly easy catch. Right, 2 plays later, down in the red zone, Jerry Jacobs essentially runs away from DK Metcalf all the way into the end zone, allowing that easy cutback inside on a little post, and getting Seattle down to the 1 yard line. And it's not just Jerry Jacobs, which is how we know it's not him executing a game plan poorly. It's not him just covering very poorly, because Cam Sutton did it too. Cam Sutton was asked on the boundary to turn and bail early, allowing a lot of underneath routes to come back, which just doesn't make a lot of sense considering Cam Sutton is very good when he gets his hands on the cornerback. He is a really good slot cornerback last year with the ability to play on the boundary. He's great when he gets contact. He's great when he gets hands on the wide receiver, as is Jerry Jacobs. And when they pressed, when they were a little bit closer in coverage, the coverage looked so much better, which is why I don't understand, especially on third downs, especially on crucial gotta have it downs. Well, Aaron Glenn asked his DBs to essentially turn and just run away from the wide receivers. Another one up here from Jerry Jacobs. It doesn't eventually go to him. Cam Sutton is a little bit in tighter coverage. He's able to make this tackle early. But if the first read was DK Metcalf, he is catching this football and he is probably running an extra 10, 15 yards because the off coverage just wasn't good from Jerry Jacobs. It was very poor. Right, this one again, this ends up being a running play, but obviously Jerry Jacobs doesn't know that immediately. And you have him just running away from the line of scrimmage. Right, he's lined up pretty close. He could get contact on Tyler Lockett, but what happens instead is he runs about 5-6 yards away from the line of scrimmage before the handoff even happens, and now he's created more separation for himself. Whereas if this was an underneath route, it's wide open. And I understand that this is zone coverage. I understand that this is a deep third zone. I understand that Jerry Jacobs is in a deep third zone, but that doesn't mean you necessarily have to just run and bail away from the wide receivers, essentially creating more separation for them if they just stood still, as opposed to, being in tight coverage on them. It just doesn't make sense. And this one right here is, I think, the most egregious one of all. This is a 3rd and 15 in the fourth quarter. This is to hold Seattle to 3 points. This is to keep it a 1-score game. And Aaron Glenn has Jerry Jacobs essentially, obviously starts 10 yards away, right? We'll take a look at it. The ball is at the 18-yard line. Jerry Jacobs is lined up at the 10. Tyler Lockett is lined up at the 20 to start this play. So he's 10 yards away, and he never, I don't think, gets closer. He turns, he backpedals, he turns away into the end zone, essentially allowing just free out route at the first down marker. Jerry Jacobs started 10 yards away when the throw was made. Jerry Jacobs is 4 to 5 yards away from Tyler Lockett. The separation it's just not ever close. When he catches the ball, Jerry Jacobs is 6 yards away because of just the way he was asked to defend today. Whereas if he was able to maybe press Tyler Lockett at the line, you have less free releases, you have less separation initially. And even though Jerry Jacobs isn't the fastest, even though Jerry Jacobs isn't the, biggest cornerback, he is scrappy. He plays really well and very physical. And I think he could have matched up very well versus Tyler Lockett if he had just been given a good game plan to go in with. And again, it's not necessarily a player thing because Cam Sutton did the same thing. Every boundary cornerback did the exact same thing, and I think it set them up to fail over and over and over. They gave so much cushion that it just never really worked for them, and they were never able to establish contact. They were never able to knock receivers off their routes, and they were so scared of DK Metcalf's deep speed. They were so scared of the deep shots from the Seattle Seahawks that they were willing to give up 5, 10, 15-yard chunks just free essentially because they didn't want to get beat over the top and they wanted to play in either a cover 3 or single high coverage. Now, I think Seattle had a lot to do with this as well. Seattle did not play bad in the slightest. They were a very good football team and their game plan was very strong. If Detroit was going to give them everything underneath, they were going to take everything underneath, right? This guy's focused on DK. This guy's watching, bailing for DK. Alex Anzalone is, 5 yards away down at the 15. So Geno Smith says, okay, quick pass, easy. It is, I believe 1st and 10. So he's right at the line of scrimmage, but he's going to pick up, a good 3-4 yards. He's going to, keep them on track to stay on the right down. Again, a play action where Brian Branch comes in. Derek Barnes bails a little bit too deep because they're so worried about getting beat on those deep crossing routes that JSN is able to catch this ball behind the line of scrimmage and pick up 6 yards just pretty much free because the Lions defensive line and the Lions defense in general was so caught up on, getting beat deep that they were told to bail early. They were told to bail very, very deep and, basically as soon as possible, get as much depth as you can. And it allowed free plays, free yak, and essentially free first downs all over the field. Now, the other thing that I want to mention about this defense is I think Aaron Glenn did a very poor job of using his tools effectively. I think Aaron Glenn has been given a lot of defensive playmakers. He's been getting a lot of defensive tools over the last 3 years. His defense should not be bottom of the barrel. It should not be bottom of the NFL anymore, but it still is. And I think a lot of it is because he uses his defense very poor. He puts pass rushers in coverage situations. He puts coverage linebackers in pass rush situations. He puts, like we said earlier, his cornerbacks playing zone 5, 6, 7 yards off the line of scrimmage when they're better in press man and they're more equipped to do that. Right, this one right here, this is the big play to James Houston, right? Noah Fant comes in. Obviously, James Houston is the guy who's going to cover him. And I don't necessarily mind James Houston being in coverage if it's going to be flat. If it's going to be 5, 6 yards away from the line of scrimmage in a zone to keep eyes on the quarterback, to, take away a quick pass. I get that. I understand that. That makes sense to me. What doesn't make sense to me is taking your best edge rusher, your most lethal edge rusher, and having him man mark a tight end 15 to 20 yards down the field. James Houston has never been good at man coverage. Even going back to Jackson State, he wasn't great at man coverage. He's always been a much better pass rusher. And if he plays coverage, it should be zone close to the line of scrimmage so he can still step up and make tackles. So having him play man coverage 15, 20 yards down the field is always going to lead to disaster, especially with a super athletic tight end such as Noah Fant. This play right here, 2 minutes and 15 seconds left in the half. 2nd and 9. They have the opportunity in an obvious pass rushing situation to send 4 very good players, right? Levi Onwuzurike had some good pressures in week 1. Aiden Hutchinson's your best pass rusher. John Kaminsky is a good run defender. And obviously, Aleem McNeil has tried to improve his pass rush over the offseason as well. First off, this is a situation where James Houston should probably be on the field over John Kaminsky. There are 3 run defenders on this play. I would argue probably 2 run defenders, maybe 2 pass rushers on this play. 2nd and 9, empty shotgun formation. This is where you send in your pass rushers. This is where you send in, James Houston. This is where you send in your guys that are going to go after the passer. But instead of that, the Detroit Lions, in fact, dropped 2 players into coverage, including your best pass rusher, Aiden Hutchinson, your best probably pass rushing interior guy in Levi Onwuzurike, and they're both 8, 9 yards away from the line of scrimmage, essentially covering the same 10-yard space, right? There's nobody in this area. And I get you want to take away the quick passing game, but You rush two guys that are much better run defenders than pass rushers. You drop your two best pass rushers on the play. You only rush 2 versus 5 to essentially take away the same space that Alex Anzalone was already taking away. Alex Anzalone can make it to Aiden Hutchinson and Levi Onwuzurike in 2 steps max. He could have either stepped up to make the tackle, if not a PBU, in the same spot that they were both already standing. And it just doesn't make sense to have all these edge rushers, all these pass rushers playing 7, 8, 9 yards away from the line of scrimmage. And it wasn't just once or twice, right? If you want to run it once or twice to try to bait an interception, you want to bait a turnover, you want to, stop the quick game once or twice, that makes sense, right? But it wasn't once or twice. I counted 5 times that Charles Harris dropped into coverage, at least 3 times Aiden Hutchinson dropped into coverage. Romeo was in coverage at least once. Levi Onwuzurike was in coverage at least once. John Kaminsky was in coverage at least once. So that's over 10 reps, over 10 defensive plays where you drop off edge rushers, you drop off pass rushers, and essentially, yeah, some of them were zone blitzes, some of them, some of them had extra pressure coming in, but there was 2 or 3 where you just simply rushed 3 guys like you were going to get home, and you just weren't. This one right here, this isn't even a designed, bluff. This isn't even, Charles Harris being on the line. He is fully lined up off the ball. He only stepped in because the motion came that way, and he was just fully in coverage as a linebacker. Charles Harris is he's not a coverage guy. He's not a player that is going to execute that scheme very well. And it just doesn't make sense to me why Aaron Glenn continued to put these guys in situations to fail. He put Jack Campbell as an edge rusher, which he's not going to do. He's not very good. He put Charles Harris as an off-ball coverage linebacker. Not going to work. He put James Houston as a man-to-man coverage linebacker on a very athletic tight end and a very good vertical threat. It's not going to work. He dropped Levi Onwuzurike and Aiden Hutchinson into coverage and expected to get pressure with Aleem McNeil and John Kaminsky rushing, and it just never worked for him. So I think the Detroit Lions defense needs to do a couple of things. I think they need to play a little bit simpler. Charles Harris should not be in coverage. Romeo Okwara should not be in coverage. Aiden Hutchinson should probably not be in coverage unless you're sending a couple other guys from the opposite side. And if you do drop your edge rushers into coverage, it should be once or twice a game. It should be once or twice to kind of change the pace, to kind of maybe bait an interception, maybe bait a quick throw into pressure, but it should not be 10, 11 times a game. It should not be predictable as to when a player is going to drop into coverage because they do it so often. Your defensive tackles should not be dropping into coverage while you're rushing 2 players. It doesn't make sense from a statistical standpoint. It doesn't make sense from a schematical standpoint. And you need to start playing, and I say Aaron Glenn needs to start playing his players to his strengths. He needs to let Jerry Jacobs and Cam Sutton play coverage that they're comfortable playing. He needs to let them be aggressive, be in press, create contact early and be in contact throughout the route. He needs to allow his edge rushers and his pass rushers to rush the passer and get after it. And I understand the pressure wasn't necessarily there all the time and you had to blitz and you had to change some things up, but it opened so many holes. And I think Seattle exploited the holes a lot better than some other teams are going to do. I think Geno Smith is a very strong quarterback. He's very good at his job, obviously why he got comeback player of the year as well as a contract extension. And I think Seattle's ability on offense really extensiated and really kind of, made it even worse than it already was. But the Lions' defensive game plan was not good. They need to play better coverage. And Aaron Glenn simply needs to put his players in situations to succeed more often. So with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. That is kind of the breakdown of the Detroit Lions defensive struggles versus the Seattle Seahawks. That's how they fix it for the Atlanta Falcons. And I think that they're going to be able to. I think they're going to match up very well versus the Atlanta Falcons. Obviously, we've talked about how good they are versus the run over the last 12, 13 game stretch. So they should be able to stop the run fairly well. They should be able, hopefully, to get back to a little bit better rushing. They should be able to get a little bit more pressure. They should be able to hopefully play coverage a little better. If Aaron Glenn looks at it and has eyes, he should be able to see that coverage scheme did not work and should not work. And I think overall, the Lions should be much better next week going into a game versus a very strong 2-0 Atlanta Falcons team. So with all that being said, that is all I have for you guys today. Let me know down in the comments below how you felt about the defensive scheme, what you think needs to change, what you think was really good about it, if you thought it was good at all. And of course, if you're still here 20 minutes in, consider subscribing to the channel. Consider hitting the bell notification so you never miss a Detroit Lions upload. With all that being said, that's all I got for you guys today. Thank you all so much for watching, and until next time, and as always, go Lions.